The airport was busy that morning. People rushed past each other, dragging bags, shouting at kids, or checking their phones. But one man walked slowly, calmly, like he had all the time in the world. He was tall, with a smooth black suit, shiny, shoes and a small leather bag. His name was Mr. Langston. His face was calm, kind, but serious. He moved through the crowd with quiet confidence. He didn't look left or right. He didn't try to impress anyone. He simply walked to Gate 7, holding a first-class boarding pass in his hand. The gate agent looked up at him, confused. She glanced at the ticket, then back at his face. "You're in first class?" she asked, her voice not rude, but not kind either. Mr. Langston nodded. "Yes, seat 1A. The woman looked again at the screen, then back at him, still confused. But she nodded and let him through. Mr. Langston walked onto the plane. The flight attendants at the door didn't greet him with a smile. They just moved. Aside, staring at his clothes, his skin, his quiet eyes, he found seat 1A, a window seat in the front row of first class. He placed his small bag in the overhead bin and sat down. He took out his phone and opened a book on the screen. He didn't bother anyone, but just a few seats behind him, a white couple noticed him. The woman leaned close to her husband and whispered loudly, "Is he in the right seat?" The man looked annoyed. Probably a mistake, or maybe he's just pretending. Mr. Langston heard them. He looked up, met their eyes for a second, then turned back to his book. Soon a young flight attendant walked down the aisle. She had a bright smile on her face, until she saw Mr. Langston. Her smile dropped. She stopped walking and looked at him up and down like she was checking for dirt. "Excuse me, sir," she said sharply. "This is first class." Mr. Langston looked up. "Yes, I know." She folded her arms. "Can I see your boarding pass?" He nodded and calmly handed it to her. She stared at it, then flipped it over like she didn't believe it was real. "You bought this seat?" she asked. "Yes," he said simply. The flight attendant narrowed her eyes, then looked around. "One moment." She walked away quickly. Mr. Langston stayed quiet. He went back to reading. But now more people in first class were watching him. Some were whispering, some were smirking. A few had pulled out their phones, quietly recording. The flight attendant returned with a second person, an older man with a badge that said, "Cabin Manager." He walked straight up to Mr. Langston and crossed his arms. "Sir," he said in a loud voice, "this section is for first-class passengers only. You need to return to the economy section. We'll have someone assist you." Mr. Langston didn't move. He stayed calm. "Is there a problem with my ticket?" he asked politely. "You're in someone else's seat," the manager said. "We have VIP guests boarding soon. You must leave now." Mr. Langston slowly handed the boarding pass again. "Please check again. I believe I'm in the correct seat." The man looked at it, but didn't even read it properly. He chuckled. "You think this gives you the right to sit here?" he said, waving the ticket. "We've had people try this trick before. It won't work." Mr. Langston stayed silent. He didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He just looked around. Everyone was watching now. No one spoke up for him. No one said it was wrong. The couple from earlier smiled like they were enjoying a show. "I'll call security," the cabin manager said loudly. "You can't stay here." A few passengers started whispering again. One person laughed. A phone camera zoomed in. But Mr. Langston didn't move. He looked straight ahead, then down at his phone. Slowly, he opened a contact. The name on the screen said Eagle Base. He hovered his finger over the call button. Then he looked at the cabin manager. "I understand," Mr. Langston said softly. "Let me just make one quick call." The manager scoffed. "Call whoever you want. You'll still be escorted out." Mr. Langston didn't respond. He pressed the call button. The line connected. He didn't shout. He didn't explain. He simply said 5 quiet words. "Code Black Eagle, it's time." Then he hung up. No one knew what that meant. The manager rolled his eyes. The couple laughed again. But across the airport, something had just changed, and in less than 5 minutes, this flight would never be the same again. Mr. Langston sat still in his seat. The phone call had ended just seconds ago, but something in the air had changed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't clear. But something was different. The cabin manager scoffed again. "Nice try," he said, shaking his head. "Calling your buddy won't change anything." He turned and walked away toward the front of the plane, speaking into a small radio. A few moments later, a voice echoed through the cabin speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a slight delay before takeoff. Please remain seated. We'll update you shortly." Passengers groaned. A few sighed in frustration. The woman in 1B rolled her eyes and muttered, "Great. Probably because of him." Mr. Langston didn't say a word. He leaned back in his seat and watched the people around him. The couple across the aisle was still staring. The man chuckled. "He's just sitting there like he owns the place." "He probably thinks he's someone important," the woman added. But something was happening outside. On the tarmac, 2 black SUVs had pulled up near the runway, vehicles that didn't belong to the airline. They had dark-tinted windows and government plates. 3 men in black suits stepped out. Earpieces, sunglasses, no words, just action. Inside the terminal at Airline Control Room 3, a red light flashed on the main screen. Supervisor stood up fast. He picked up his desk phone with a shaky hand. "We just got a Level 7 call, code Black Eagle." Everyone in the room froze. "Are you sure?" the manager asked. "Positive. It came from that plane, Flight 862, Gate 7. The manager's face turned pale. "Tell the captain to delay all movement. Do not take off." Back inside the plane, the pilot's voice came on over the speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We've just received word from air traffic control. We need to remain at the gate for a few more minutes. Please bear with us." Another groan swept through the cabin. People didn't know what was going on. The delay made no sense. The young flight attendant who had questioned Mr. Langston walked back down the aisle, faking a smile but clearly nervous. She stopped at 1A again. "Sir, security will be here soon to assist you off the aircraft." Mr. Langston looked up with calm eyes. "No, I don't think they will." She blinked. "Excuse me?" He pointed toward the front of the plane. "In about 30 seconds, someone else will come in. And they won't be asking me to leave." The woman laughed nervously. "Sir, please don't make this harder than it has to be. We already told you." She stopped. Everyone turned toward the plane door. There was a knock. Not from the outside. Jet bridge. From within the security side door, the one that only top officials used. The lead flight attendant stepped forward, confused. She opened the door slowly. Standing there were 2 men in black suits. Behind them was a woman with a federal badge around her neck. "We're here for Mr. Langston," the woman said firmly. The lead flight attendant smiled awkwardly. "Oh, yes, of course. He was in the wrong seat, so we're—" "No," the agent said. "He's exactly where he's supposed to be." A long silence filled the cabin. The woman turned and walked down the aisle toward Mr. Langston. She gave a small, respectful nod. "Sir, everything's been handled. You may continue. Your flight is planned. We're grounding this plane for now." The couple in 1C and 1D went silent. The passengers nearby gasped. The same manager who had threatened Mr. Langston returned to the front, his face pale. I didn't know, sir," he stammered. Mr. Langston looked up calmly. "You didn't ask. You assumed." The man tried to say something else, but the agent cut in. "Captain, you and your crew are requested to step off the plane immediately. We're bringing in a new team." "What?" the pilot asked over the intercom. "This flight is no longer under your command." A hush fell over the cabin. Not even whispers now. Just silence and fear. Mr. Langston pulled out his phone again and opened his book. As he turned the page, the woman from the couple finally asked the question no one dared to ask. "Who is he?" No one answered. But Mr. Langston didn't need to say a word, because now the entire plane, and soon the entire airline, was about to learn who he really was. The flight attendant stood frozen by the front door. The crew had just been ordered off the plane. Passengers whispered across aisles. Everyone kept looking back at the man in seat 1A, Mr. Langston, calm, quiet, still turning pages in his small black book. The couple in 1C and 1D looked shaken now. Just 20 minutes ago, they had been laughing at him. Now they looked like they'd seen a ghost. The woman leaned over and whispered to her husband, "Why would federal agents show up?" For him, he didn't answer. He couldn't. Because deep down something told him, this wasn't just a regular man. Meanwhile, inside the terminal, the airport's general manager had received a message. One line, one name. Langston Group Holdings. Her eyes widened. She stood up so fast her chair rolled back. "Get me the airline CEO now, right now." Back on the plane, the replacement flight crew was already boarding. Quiet, respectful, professional. They didn't ask questions. They didn't look confused. They simply walked to Mr. Langston and gave a small, respectful nod. "Mr. Langston, it's an honor, sir. We're ready when you are." He nodded politely. "Thank you." The passengers watched all this like a live movie. One brave young man in row 3 leaned toward the aisle. "Hey, I don't mean to be rude, but, who are you, sir?" Mr. Langston didn't answer at first. He turned a page in his book, then he said softly, "My name is Nathaniel Langston. My company owns 17% of this airline." Gasps. The air left the room. Even the couple that had insulted him looked like their souls left their bodies. 7%. That meant he wasn't just a customer. He was one of the owners. 2 years ago, Mr. Langston had quietly bought shares in the parent company of this airline. No press, no photos, no attention. He had worked in silence, building a business empire that spanned energy, tech, and now aviation. He didn't care about being seen. He cared about being respected. The woman from the couple stood up shakily. "Sir, I'm so sorry, we didn't mean—" Mr. Langston raised a hand gently. "Respect doesn't start with knowing someone's name," he said. "It starts with how you treat strangers." The woman sat down quietly. The cabin had never been this quiet before takeoff. A message came through the plane's comm system again, not from the cockpit, but directly from the airline's headquarters. It played through every speaker on the plane. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is a formal message from the CEO of SkyTrust Airlines. We want to deeply apologize for the treatment of Mr. Nathaniel Langston. Effective immediately, the flight crew involved has been suspended, and a full investigation is underway. Thank you for your patience." Even the agents at the gate stood still when they heard it. The young man in row 3 leaned back in shock. This guy made one phone call and shut down the whole flight. Not just the flight, someone whispered. The airline. But the real surprise hadn't even happened yet. Mr. Langston turned on his phone and made one more call. "Yes, proceed with the announcement. Send the memo to all staff. I'll handle the press release." He ended the call and stood up slowly. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, looking around, "this flight will take off shortly. But I wanted to let you all know something important." People turned toward him. Phones were recording again. "Starting tomorrow, I'm no longer just an investor in this airline." He paused. "I'm now the new chairman of the board." The plane exploded into quiet gasps. The man who was laughed at just 30 minutes ago now owned the seat at the very top of the company. In the front of the cabin, the new captain stepped out of the cockpit and saluted him. "Chairman Langston, we're ready for departure." "Orders, sir?" Mr. Langston gave a slight nod. "Let's, fly." The jet engines roared to life. But something had changed in that plane. It wasn't just about luxury anymore. It was about lessons, and for everyone who had judged him too quickly. The lesson had only just begun. The flight took off smoothly, but nobody was calm. Everyone kept stealing glances at Mr. Langston. They whispered, they texted, they stared. The man in seat 1A was no longer a stranger. He was the new chairman of the A, but he had shut down a crew called federal agents, and now he owned their future. And yet, Mr. Langston still sat silently. No smile, no pride, just deep thought. He wasn't here for revenge. He was here for something bigger. 1 hour into the flight, A flight supervisor entered the first-class cabin. She looked nervous, holding a letter in her hand. She walked straight to Mr. Langston and handed it to him. "Sir, this is from our CEO, a personal apology." Mr. Langston took the envelope, opened it slowly, and read. It was a long, formal apology. Big words, sincere phrases, an offer for private compensation, vouchers, VIP treatment for life. Mr. Langston folded it carefully, placed it in his jacket, and then looked up. "Tell your CEO thank you," he said. "But this isn't about me." The woman looked confused. "Sir, this is about how your people treat every black passenger, not just the one who owns part of the company." Silence. Every passenger around him heard that, and it hit like thunder. He wasn't mad they mistreated him. He was angry they thought they could treat anyone that way. Later, the couple who mocked him earlier tried again to apologize. The woman even cried. "We were just surprised, sir. We didn't mean harm." Mr. Langston looked at them gently. "You didn't laugh because you were surprised," he said. "You laughed because you assumed I didn't belong here." They looked down in shame. "But I didn't build my company just for rich people. I built it for those who were never invited to sit in seat 1A. Back at SkyTrust headquarters, panic was growing. News had leaked. The story was all over social media. Black man shuts down airline crew with one call, then takes over the company. It was trending on every major platform. Thousands were reposting the video of him being told to leave. Millions were sharing his name. Comments flooded in. "That's how you handle racism. Seat 1A belongs to every person who worked for it. We need more Langstons in boardrooms." The CEO of SkyTrust tried calling again. Twice. Mr. Langston didn't answer. Instead, he wrote something on his phone, a short message. Then, he handed it to the new flight attendant. "Please forward this to the press team before we land." She nodded and left. What was the message? A single post, just 17 words. "A seat in first class doesn't prove your worth, but how you treat others shows yours." That post hit 10 million views in 2 hours. When the plane landed, the scene outside was different. News vans, security teams, airline staff standing in a line near the gate. A red carpet had been rolled out, but Mr. Langston didn't walk on it. Stopped at the door and turned back to the passengers. "Thank you all for the journey," he said. "Remember what you saw today. It wasn't about money. It was about dignity." And with that, he stepped off the plane. No security guards, no assistants, just him, walking calmly like any other man. Outside, journalists shouted questions. "Mr. Langston, will the crew be fired? Will you shut the airline down? Are you suing?" He raised one hand. "No lawsuits, no shutdowns, but there will be change. I'm not here to punish, I'm here to rebuild." Inside the airport, every SkyTrust manager stood still as he walked past. Some saluted. Some looked away in shame. But Mr. Langston didn't stop for them. He walked toward a room labeled Board Meeting, Emergency Session. He was done being a silent partner. He was now the man at the head of the table, and everything was about to change. The boardroom at SkyTrust Airlines was cold and silent. 12 executives sat around a long glass table, nervous, restless. They had all been called to an emergency meeting, and they knew why. The man who had shaken the world from seat 1A was walking toward them, and now he owned a powerful share of the company. The double doors opened. Everyone stood. Mr. Langston stepped in. No smile, no anger, just calm. He walked to the front of the room and placed his phone on the table. Then, he looked around, one face at a time. The CFO cleared her throat. "Mr. Langston, we want to deeply apologize. What happened to you on Flight 976 was unacceptable." Mr. Langston nodded slowly. "It wasn't just unacceptable," he said, quietly. "It was the truth coming out." Silence. He looked at the head of operations. "I've studied your hiring reports," he said. 90% of your pilots are white men. Less than 5% of your first-class crew are black." The woman shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "That's just how the industry works," she said. Mr. Langston raised an eyebrow. Or maybe it's how you made it work. He tapped his phone and played a video, the one where the flight attendant had mocked him in front of passengers. Their voices. Their laughter. The words, "Security will handle this." Everyone in the room heard it. They couldn't deny it anymore. "I've sat quietly for years," Mr. Langston said. "As a shareholder, as a passenger, as a black man. But I will not. Be quiet now." He pulled out a folder. It was thick. Inside were new policies, new hiring plans, new ethics rules. "This airline will change, not for me, but for every customer who ever felt invisible." A man in a suit spoke up, the COO. "And if we refuse?" he said, folding his arms. Mr. Langston looked at him with quiet fire. "Then I take my money, I take my shares, and I take the public with me." He tapped the phone again. Screens lit up around the room with real-time data. 42% drop in ticket sales. Cancel Sky Trust trending globally. Over 18 million views on the viral video. "You think this is about a seat?" he asked. "This is about the soul of your company." The CEO, an older white man at the end of the table, finally spoke. "Langston, I built this airline from nothing, and now you want to rewrite it?" Langston leaned forward. "No, I want to save it." He stood up. "Because if I leave, your legacy ends." No one argued again. The board voted one by one. Each voice rang out, "Yes, yes, yes," until it was unanimous. Sky Trust would never be the same again. When the meeting ended, Mr. Langston walked out of the room alone. But he didn't walk away from power. He walked into purpose. He had never wanted the spotlight. He wanted the system, fixed, for the silent passengers who never had a voice. And now, he had opened a door that could never be closed again. Outside the boardroom, a young black janitor was mopping the floor. He looked up nervously when he saw Mr. Langston coming. But instead of walking past him, Mr. Langston stopped. "What's your name, son?" "Tyrell, sir," the young man said, surprised. "You ever dream of flying planes?" Tyrell nodded slowly. 6 months later, Sky Trust Airlines was unrecognizable. The logo was the same. The planes still soared. But inside, everything had changed. New crews, new policies, new spirit. And at the center of it all was Mr. Langston, the man they once laughed at in first class and was now their silent guide from above. Today was a special day. Mr. Langston was flying again. Same airline, same route, same seat, MIA. But this time, the world knew his name, and the seat no longer defined him, he defined it. As he arrived at the airport, he was met with warm smiles, real smiles. A young black woman in uniform greeted him. "Mr. Langston, it's an honor to welcome you aboard." Her name tag read Captain Joy Matthews. She was the first black female pilot in Sky Trust's history. He smiled back. "The honor's mine, Captain." As he stepped onto the plane, he noticed something else. The same couple from his first flight, the ones who had whispered and stared, were seated across the aisle. They recognized him instantly. The woman looked down. The man cleared his throat. Awkwardly, Mr. Langston nodded politely, then turned to help an elderly man struggling with a bag. No anger, no revenge, just grace. Flight attendants walked by, not with judgment but with respect. One of them leaned in. "Thank you, sir, for changing everything." Mr. Langston said nothing, but his eyes said enough. As the plane prepared for takeoff, a small boy peeked around the curtain from economy class. He was no older than 7. His skin was brown, and his eyes were wide with wonder. "Mama, is that the man from the video?" he whispered. His mother shushed him gently, embarrassed, but Mr. Langston smiled and motioned him over. "Come here, young man." The boy stepped forward shyly. Mr. Langston pointed to the seat beside. "You ever sat in first class before?" The boy shook his head. "Now you have." The seatbelt sign blinked on. The boy returned to his seat. But in his heart, something had changed. He didn't just see a seat, he saw a future. As the plane lifted into the sky, Mr. Langston looked out the window. Clouds drifted by. But his mind drifted back to that day, to the mocking voices, the laughter, the humiliation, and now, to silence. Because sometimes, power doesn't roar. Sometimes, it whispers through change. Mid-flight, a reporter quietly approached him from the back. She had been granted permission for one question, just one. She crouched beside his seat and asked softly, "Mr. Langston, what made you stay silent that day? Why didn't you fight back immediately?" He looked at her for a long moment, then said, "Because I wasn't fighting for me. I was waiting for the world to listen." Later, as the plane began its descent, an announcement came through the speakers. It was Captain Matthews. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are preparing to land. But before we do, we'd like to recognize a passenger who helped steer this airline to a better sky." Gasps echoed through the cabin. "To Mr. Langston, thank you for teaching us that silence isn't weakness, and dignity isn't a luxury." Applause rose, from first class, from economy, from the crew, even from the couple across the aisle, and Mr. Langston? He simply nodded once. The wheels touched the ground. A new day had landed with them, not just for one man, but for every person who had ever been told, "You don't belong here." As Mr. Langston stepped off the plane, a reporter snapped a final photo. The caption would later read, "He sat in 1A, but he stood for millions." Outside, the boy from earlier ran up again with a paper in his hand. It was a drawing, a plane, a smiling man in seat 1A, and beside him, a young pilot with brown skin and curly hair. "That's me," the boy said, "one day." Mr. Langston took the paper gently and smiled. One day, and soon. As he walked toward the exit, people passed him by. Some knew him, some didn't, but all of them walked through a better world because of him. And that was enough. Because Mr. Langston didn't just change an airline. He changed a mindset. He didn't shout, he acted, he didn't fight back with fists. He fought with truth, grace, and a phone. And now first class would never feel the same again. Weeks passed since Mr. Langston's flight. SkyTrust Airlines was changing fast. Passengers noticed, employees felt it, and the world was watching. In a small office near the airport, Mr. Langston sat quietly. The walls were covered with photos. Photos of people he had met on his journey. Young pilots, new flight attendants, children inspired by his story. His phone buzzed. A message. "We need you at the airport. Urgent." He stood and walked quickly to the airport. At the gate, a crowd had gathered. Not reporters this time. Not executives. Just people. Passengers who wanted to say thank you. One by one, they stepped forward, a mother with tears. "You gave my daughter hope. She wants to be a pilot now." A young man in uniform. "Because of you, I got my dream job. Thank you." An elderly man shook his hand. "I never thought airlines could change. You proved me wrong." Mr. Langston looked around. His heart was full. But there was more work to do. Suddenly, the airport speaker crackled to life. "Attention all passengers. Flight 976 to New York is now boarding." Mr. Langston smiled. His flight, his mission. Before boarding, he turned to the crowd. "This is not the end," he said. "This is just the beginning." On the plane, Captain Joy Matthews gave him a nod. "Ready for the next flight?" "Always," he replied. As the plane lifted, Mr. Langston looked out the window. Below, the city sparkled. Above, the sky was endless. He whispered, "For every person who feels unseen, your time will come." He opened his phone. A new message. New opportunity. A new story waiting to be told. Because Mr. Langston knew one thing, change starts with one voice, one action, one moment, and sometimes, one man in seat 1A.